Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your Sun in Sagittarius and Virgo rising. I was just looking at my, you know, I was just like searching through my videos to see if I had done this yet, because I have these different permutations, like the opposite of the Sun in Virgo and Sagittarius rising. But this is when the Sun is in Sag and you have Virgo rising. As somebody with the Sun in Sag and the Moon in Virgo, sometimes people will ask me, does this apply if you have the Moon in, the sign instead of the rising sign? And my answer is yes and no. You will notice that some of this stuff will definitely resonate with you, but the moon and the ascendant are different positions, so there will be slight variations in how this will play out. But when you're dealing with inner planets, inner points, then for sure there will be some things that you will probably see as true for you. But I do have one with the Sun in Sagittarius and the Moon in Virgo, if you are a Moon and not Virgo rising. So just check out my channel for that. So the Sun is what our focus is a lot of times in astrology, because it is kind of the centerpiece of what our influences are when we're talking about us as individuals, because that's actually what the Sun represents, is the individual. And the rising sign is the cusp of the first house, which is the house of the self. So I'm not trying to imply that that has no bearing on your personality or this lifetime, who you came to embody, because the first house is literally your body. But in terms of your essence, your core essence, I would say the Sun. If we looked at anything, we would look at the Sun. That's why people want to know another person's sun sign more than they want to know their rising sign or their moon sign. So this will play out differently with various Sun and Sagittarius people, because you are going to have different moon signs, which is another very important influence in terms of how it impacts your personality. All of the inner planets are, but the moon is very important because it's your emotional nature. And let's say you have the moon in a fellow fire sign, then that's really going to emphasize the fiery qualities within you, and you're going to be very passionate, and that may actually overtake that Virgo rising. So I'm going to start by talking about Virgo rising. And it's really funny because I can't remember, I do so many videos for YouTube, but I think I was speaking about Virgo rising once, and I said something about being like a wallflower or a shrinking violet, and I got read the riot act, basically, because and another time when I said Virgo is a sign of the servant, same thing. So who knew that Virgo could just really just get incensed like that. But, Virgo is a sign of the servant, so let's not get it twisted. And anybody who is in that, the sixth house is Virgo's domain. So it deals with the issues of work, and you could say productivity, organization, servitude, but meaning that one is giving of oneself to assist another person. And health is connected to Virgo too. So, Virgo is a mutable earth sign. And as such, the earth element obviously is grounded. So it is very sensible, whether you're talking about Virgo or Taurus, which is my rising sign, or Capricorn. Yeah, that's the ticket, Capricorn. So when somebody has a rising sign in Earth, they are going to usually be perceived as grounded. Now, why is this important? Because Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. So, Sagittarius can sometimes be a bit chaotic. I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but let's get real here because fire itself is wild, okay? If you've ever observed a fire, it just like can spread anywhere. It doesn't like discriminate. It's not sitting there, Virgo is, the sign of discrimination, not meaning, prejudice, but meaning discernment, judging the situation and, making a sober analysis of it to take proper action. And so this can actually serve as a way to kind of anchor yourself if you are feeling like you tend to be scattered, because that is definitely something that Sagittarians can experience on a regular basis, is that scattering effect. Okay. Now, I want to look at it from the perspective of these two signs are mutable. And this is, as soon as I said the word scattered, I actually wanted to take some of that back because I see Virgo as a high-strung sign, because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Therefore, you're ruled by Mercury since it's on the ascendant. Okay, you can also say that your ruler is Jupiter, being your sun sign's ruler, but the ruler of the chart is Mercury. So this type of mutable sign that's also mercurial, like Gemini, can give that sort of changeability factor. And sometimes you may be flexible, but sometimes there might be that nervous tension that shows up in perhaps trying to reel things in. The other piece in this is that Virgo is the signs Virgo and Sag square off to one another only within a certain degree span. So you're going to have to check your chart for whether or not they say it's a square. I recommend astro.com. That's what I use to generate charts because it gives an aspects table that is very clear to read, and you can see whether your sun and ascendant square off. If they say that they square off, you will find that you are frustrated by the way that you come across to others because you may feel like it's not the way that you want to present yourself. Typically, this will mean that the Virgo part of yourself is front and center, and you may be perceived as more persnickety, if you know what that means, like overly picky about different things. I mean, let me tell you something. You really don't need to have an official square for that to be the case. So I'm just going to keep it real. Even having the moon in Virgo myself, I think that I probably give off those vibes. So this is one of those examples where it may just be baked into your basic personality. But these can be mannerisms where you're very, I don't know, I'd say you might be very uptight about certain things, very exacting and needing things just so. Okay. And it may come across to others that you're overly critical. And that, yeah, that might be the thing, but it's not so much um, that this is who you are. It could depend because you might very well have the moon in Virgo. God help you if you do. That would be really something, you know. But other people, a lot of times I think, I know that this is true of me. I don't realize that other people are like me. Meaning, when we're talking about insecurity, for instance, it's easy to assume that everyone has a higher self-esteem than you do. Everyone is more confident. And it only takes an innocent remark that you may make and somebody becomes defensive that you realize that that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so if you can embody that understanding, it can go a long way, because you may not even realize that you're being like that. And I believe that the rising sign sometimes can be a defense mechanism that is coming from your upbringing or your family of origin. This is some theory that I formulated about the rising sign that really has helped me a little bit to kind of decode it, because sometimes it's a little bit tricky in terms of like how to integrate it in the overall analysis of the personality. Because a long, long time ago, when I was first getting interested in astrology, I read a book that had something, I might have taken out from the library, and it had a title like uh, The Rising Sign, Your Social Mask, or something along those lines. And I remember being very uncomfortable with this concept. And I think it's because as Sagittarians, we do not like masks. We like authenticity. We like truth. That is the credo of Sagittarians, is the truth. Part of my theory is that when you have the sun in hard aspect to the ascendant, and when I say hard aspect, I'm going to loosen it to mean that it's in a sign that it typically would be in hard aspect with, because it's basically going to have those kind of clashes in terms of what each of the signs represents and the elements. That it's very possible that with your family of origin, who you wanted to become was thwarted or misunderstood or not accepted. Like you were kind of the black sheep in the family. If you were not downright scapegoated or, kind of like the one that was focused on, excluded or picked on, you were the odd man out, the odd person out in some way. So it's possible that your family was, mainly earth and or water. And the elements of earth and water are feminine signs, and they tend to be, to me, they tend to be more connected to the material world. If you think about it, they are elements that are connected to this world in terms of nature. Um, and they they're tangible, so they understand tangible things. You can't hold fire in your hands. So it's hard for us to be grasped in that sense. And we love intangible things, Sagittarians, like philosophy, for instance. But anyway, so um, the way that we may have chosen to fit into that system is through trying to um, deal with the senses in some way. So maybe when you were younger, you had a collection or some kind of classification. Virgos love, filing things away, having different collections. And this could be like a childhood, like obsession with a certain thing that you had all of these things and you would always organize them and put them in order. And that made you feel more in control of your life. So that can extend to the way that you carry yourself. Maybe a person with Virgo rising will typically not be very flashy in their appearance. They might be like, that's why I said um, the I said shrinking violet, but that's more of like a personality trait of being more shy. Okay. The fire signs can be very flamboyant or extroverted. The feminine signs like earth and water tend to be more introverted. So also nondescript, meaning that you dress in a way that doesn't really call attention to yourself. Okay. Modest, being modest. Virgo is the maiden, or whatever the male form of that is. So it's has that pure, wholesome quality, or you could say puritanical quality. You may favor a lot of clean lines in your clothing, lack of patterns, just kind of very unadorned types of clothing, maybe in colors that are earth tones. I would say for some reason green is like jumping out at me, but I don't mean like bright green. It's funny, I think about my father because he was a Taurus, and I think green is associated with Taurus with emerald or jade. I think that's the birthstone, and I remember him having like this bright green, I don't know, but that was in the 70s, so that's the excuse that we can say he had something like that. And he was an earth sign, but very bright. But my dad was quite interesting, to say the least. Um, but yeah, something that is very neutral in tone. And so you may have glasses, okay, because Mercury is your ruler and that has to do with the mind. So anything where somebody needs to read or just, they might wear glasses and they might not shy away from wearing them. They might not be one of those people who gets contacts because they don't care. They might like that brainy kind of a look. And by the way, I just thought of this. I don't think it isn't possible for a Sun in Sagittarius person to have Venus in Virgo. It's too far from your sun. You can have it in Libra, but you can't have it in Virgo. Maybe Mars, though. Maybe Mars could be a sign of attraction to someone. You might have Mars in Virgo, and you might find people with glasses actually hot. So there you go. So this can mean that you're just a very you might be in the background as a person and not be the person who wants to be the center of attention. You may actually choose, if you're a student, to go to the back of the room in certain cases. I mean, I think with Sag, because Sag is so enthusiastic about learning, maybe that's modified in certain cases because maybe that's the one place where you come alive is in a classroom. But I could certainly see, going to the back of the classroom, um, but in other environments, not necessarily wanting to be front and center. And if you're a woman growing up, you may have covered yourself more than the average person. I'm thinking about, well, I mean, nowadays, I'm trying to think like the fashions. I'm recording this in 2023, and it seems like short shorts are back, and that is very revealing. Um, and I was actually thinking back to when Britney Spears started becoming famous. So the late 1990s into the 2000s, to me, those were hellacious years. I mean, years we're talking about. Because I was much older then. I was already like in my 30s, into my 30s, but I was still buying clothing. I was still buying some junior clothing at that point. Uh, just not necessarily being wanting to be frumpy, uh, going into my 30s, but it was impossible to buy uh, jeans at that time where your butt crack wasn't showing because they were low rise jeans and they were the most uncomfortable jeans ever, ever. I hope that fashion never comes back. It was awful. And it looked awful too. It was not an attractive look. And every time you sat down, your butt crack showed. So it was like a horrible look. Plumber's crack, they call it. So, um, and but the worst thing was the comfort factor. So I would always buy men's Levi's, which were like full rise, either thrift stores or I would have to buy them off the rack sometimes. Nowadays, with the internet, because this was actually before, it was at the very beginning of online ordering. Amazon existed, but it was very new. It wasn't something I did all the time. So anyway, I think it would be a lot easier to find what you're looking for these days just online. But if you're at that age where you're a teenager then, um, I think that you probably were like mortified and I don't know what you did. So if you were, I don't know, I'm trying to do the math with that. If that was like, it was around 20 years ago. My God. I mean, Britney Spears is in her early 40s, so you can imagine how long ago it was. So if you're like I guess you would be a millennial, maybe in your late 30s, and you remember how it was in high school, or even your early 20s, the kind of clothing you wore. Let me know below if you, especially as women, I would say, because I can't really speak to men. They didn't have, I don't think they cut the jeans like that for men. It was basically women. Um, what kind of things did you wear? Did you feel comfortable wearing belly shirts and ass crack jeans? Okay, I'm just curious. Um, because it was pretty lewd for a while. It was pretty revealing and kind of like um, trashy. It was a trashy look. Okay, and I I probably sound like a church lady or something nowadays, but it's not that. I mean, I used to wear mini skirts and stuff like that, so I get it, but it just was to me it was a bit much how women how even girls teenage girls, young women were dressing and almost like forced to dress in a certain way because you tried to buy other things. Um, Luckily, I was already into thrifting at that point. So, and fashion really opened up at that time. So it was pretty easy to do it. Now, I'm sorry I'm going off on a tangent about fashion, but that really is the rising sign, is how you dress. So hopefully it won't be too boring to some people, but of course they can always skip ahead. So, as you get older, I feel like you grow into your sun sign, and that means I would say after your first Saturn return in your early 30s, you may feel like more ready to let go of the programming from childhood and step into your own authenticity of your who you came here to be, which is your sun sign. So let's talk about that sun sign in Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules the ninth house, the sage, the teacher, the master teacher, I would say, because the ninth house can be higher education. Well, philosophy is, it doesn't get much higher than philosophy because it's really about the study of life itself. And study meaning even like contemplating, not just going through the motions of life, um, hitting the alarm clock to go to the job to keep your body alive and then die. This is kind of the trajectory. Even if somebody they have success in their work or their job, if it is not applied to a higher um, kind of concept about what it is that we're here for, then of what purpose did it serve besides stroking the ego? That's an example. So I was just, as I was doing this, I was just philosophizing. And this is what Sagittarius tend to do. Now, a um, with a rising sign like Virgo, there could be this, balance between the micro and the macro. And Sag is about the bigger picture. And so, yeah, I mean, that could be one of the sources of conflict, at least earlier on in life, is that people might think that you are too hyper focused on details, almost to the point of being OCD, and that they don't understand how broad minded you can be. Sagittarius rules the ninth house of higher education, which can mean university, but also long distance travel. So for some of you, this may be what really propels you to become a citizen of the world. And because you have Mercury as your ruler, this may be as first as a what do they call it? I mean, international student, but studying abroad, they call it. That might be something that is right up your alley. And then you fall in love with a foreign country and you decide to maybe even take up residence there because you just love being, expanding your worldview. Maybe you become a college professor because you're ruled by Mercury. There's going to be other factors that determine it, but the sun sign is definitely one of the things I look at when I'm doing career readings. I will look at that factor, and definitely, like if your rising sign is Virgo, then you have Gemini at the midheaven, which is the cusp of the 10th house of career. And therefore, that could certainly factor into your career. Something in academia, maybe like a writer of books that you have to research, or who knows. I mean, possibly fiction. That's always a possibility. But who knows? Maybe you like to travel in order to get ideas for your latest book. Sagittarius, being a fire sign, can be rebellious and kind of push against the rules, push against what is being told that you have to do, you have to be a part of. So you're getting a theme here, I'm sure, of careers where your mental prowess is front and center. Chances are you're not going to take very well to any type of profession or work where it is pretty mindless. Like, even when I worked retail, it was cool because I was able to sell. I was able to talk to people about, natural foods and supplements. And that was kind of an interest of mine, a pet interest anyway. So that was in alignment. But if you're just kind of doing very rote work, it probably would be the worst thing ever for you. Even though Virgo likes that kind of routine, you still have to have that element of the mutable where things can change, where there is, it's even, I would say, even with schedules where there's flexibility, not when it's just like ironclad with things that you have to do. And so, definitely something that involves utilizing your mind in a way, your intellect specifically. Teacher, writer, but even healer in the form of some kind of life coach. I consider life coaches to be healers, because Sag is a fire sign and there's like natural positivity and, like an enthusiasm that you can convey to others. But with that backbone of Virgo, it can give that structured approach that you may embody in your own life. And so that combination could actually be kind of good. So that's why I feel as though when we talk about like hard angles and things like that, we have to take into account that it can still yield some great results, where even though a person may find it hard to integrate certain aspects of themselves or to communicate it with others in a way where people can see consistency, they may see a lot of contradicting elements to a person's nature. It can still, on an overall level, show that a person is, multifaceted. And in this case, you have that inspirational ability, and maybe you come across as very efficient and organized and sensible, practical, pragmatic, and somebody who is very productive, who likes to be productive in life. In terms of love, you may attract earth signs or water signs by extension, and that can be a little bit annoying for the average Sagittarian because, this is not true across the board for sure. But at least in some cases, they are not going to be the type of people who really get you. And they may even feel that it was false advertising, that they didn't realize how wild you can be, or how maybe sometimes scattered. They thought you were so together, and they found out that you actually have a part of yourselves that is very kind of a little bit scattered. And there can be this side of yourself that is very helpful. And you have to look at your Venus sign and your moon sign, I think, for relationship issues, because Sag loves freedom. No question about that. But that doesn't mean that Sag is never settled down. It's just that you need a person who is going to be very compatible with you overall. And in some cases, if the other person isn't really showcasing certain things, they might not be the right person for you. So if your Venus and Mars, for instance, are in Scorpio or Capricorn, and you have found yourself with a very grounded individual who might be a water sign or an earth sign, you have to accept that person as they are. You can't turn them into another fire sign. That's just not what they're about. So really pay attention to the things that you value most, Sag. And if you're looking for someone who sees life as an adventure, then, you know, tune into those qualities in that person to make sure that they actually possess them. And then you'll see if you're with the right individual. But yeah, you do have some these two signs definitely have different goals sometimes. So you have to be able to understand that and satisfy both of those sides of yourself. But the sun sign definitely wins out overall. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.